The hum of fluorescent lights filled the small courtroom in Danbury, Connecticut. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning the papers before him. "So," he said flatly, "the evidence in question has already been deleted?" Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The prosecutor hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. It was destroyed before we could recover it." Silence. Then the gavel struck once, sharp as a gunshot. That's how the curtain lifted on one of the most unsettling police misconduct cases the quiet town of Brookfield had ever seen. The fall of Officer Stephen Rountos. Stephen Peter Rountos was not supposed to be a villain in this story. A veteran officer and the school resource officer at Brookfield High School, he had a reputation for being approachable, easy to talk to, a bridge between law enforcement and students. Parents trusted him. Students joked with him in the hallways. But in May 2021, the first cracks appeared. Two former students came forward with a nightmare revelation: private, intimate photographs, taken when they were minors, were being circulated among adults. The whispers grew louder, then exploded into formal complaints. And those whispers all pointed toward one man, Officer Rountos. An internal investigation was launched. Detectives, uncomfortable and stunned, found themselves questioning one of their own. When asked about the images, Rountos hesitated. And then, in a statement later cited in the warrant affidavit, he admitted to having passed the photos around. Even worse, investigators soon discovered that the device believed to contain crucial evidence, his cell phone, had been deliberately destroyed. According to his own admission, Rountos smashed it beyond repair. By the time the police sought a warrant, the evidence was gone, literally reduced to fragments. Evidence tampered, justice tangled. In legal terms, what Rountos did was straightforward and damning. Under U.S. law, tampering with physical evidence occurs when someone knowingly destroys or conceals material they believe will be used in an investigation. It's a felony for a reason. Evidence is the backbone of justice. Without it, the truth collapses. But in this case, the act of destruction did more than eliminate proof, it crippled the prosecution. Investigators couldn't access the phone's data. The alleged images, their origins, the possible distribution network, all of it vanished with a single, deliberate act. Without digital forensics, prosecutors couldn't definitively prove the content, context, or extent of the crime. What might have been charges for distributing child sexual abuse material became a single, diluted count of evidence tampering. The irony? The case that should have been about protecting children instead became about protecting procedure. A quiet plea, a loud outcry. By November 2022, the state arrested Rountos. Reporters huddled outside the courthouse as he entered, head bowed, face drawn. Cameras clicked. The headline was already writing itself. Ex-Brookfield school cop charged with destroying evidence. Months passed. Legal maneuvering followed. The prosecution, frustrated by the missing phone, tried to salvage what they could. In February 2025, Rountos entered a plea of nolo contendere, no contest. He would not admit guilt, but he wouldn't fight the charge either. The courtroom was still when the sentence was read. 3 years of probation. A suspended 5-year prison term. Gasps echoed. Some wept. Others muttered that it was a slap on the wrist, that an officer had not only betrayed trust, but evaded full justice. Outside, the police department moved to strip him of certification, ensuring he could never serve again. But that did little to soothe the damage already done. Inside, the legal fallout. The implications stretched far beyond one man's misconduct. 1. The legal black hole. The destroyed phone represented a legal black hole, a void into which truth vanished. Courts may sometimes draw adverse inferences, assuming the missing evidence would have been unfavorable to the accused. But in criminal law, that assumption rarely equals proof. Without the phone, there were no timestamps, no message logs, no metadata trails. No way to prove who saw what, when, or how. And so the case, once poised to expose a possible pattern of exploitation, narrowed into a single procedural violation. 2. Institutional shockwaves. Brookfield police faced scrutiny, too. How could one of their own tamper with evidence under internal investigation? The department promised reform and full cooperation. Yet behind closed doors, officers reportedly whispered about the culture of silence, the unspoken code that made it hard to believe, let alone investigate, a fellow cop. The fallout was as much about trust as it was about law. 3. Civil war in the courts. Even as the criminal case closed, civil suits opened like floodgates. Families of the victims filed federal lawsuits against the town, the department, and Rountos himself, citing emotional trauma and constitutional violations. Court filings painted a grim picture: systemic negligence, a lack of oversight, and alleged attempts to minimize the scandal. One plaintiff's attorney said bluntly, this wasn't just one man's crime. It was a system's failure. Timeline of collapse. May 2021, students report the circulation of explicit images. September 2021, Rountos allegedly admits involvement. November 2021, he resigns amid investigation. November 2022, arrested for evidence tampering. February 2025, enters plea deal, avoiding trial. June 2025, sentenced to probation, police move for decertification. Each date was another nail in the coffin of public confidence. Why it matters. The Rountos case isn't just about a single officer. It's a reflection of how fragile justice becomes when evidence, the raw data of truth, is erased. It questions the very foundation of accountability. What happens when those sworn to uphold the law manipulate it? For prosecutors, it's a cautionary tale about digital fragility. For victims, it's a haunting reminder that justice can be lost not in court, but in the palm of a hand, when a phone is smashed, and with it, their chance to be heard. The Brady versus Maryland doctrine, which requires the disclosure of exculpatory evidence, loses meaning when the evidence itself no longer exists. Without transparency, fairness withers. Without integrity, institutions rot from within. The final question. When the sentencing ended, the courtroom emptied in uneasy silence. Reporters filed their stories, the townspeople moved on, or tried to. But the story didn't end with the verdict. Weeks later, as civil depositions began, new whispers surfaced. One investigator, speaking off record, hinted that fragments of data, partial cloud backups, synced logs, might still exist. Somewhere, in the depths of an old server or backup drive, there could be traces of what was once destroyed. If that's true, the case isn't over. Not by a long shot. The rain was relentless that night, slapping against the windows of the Brookfield Police Department as Detective Erin Hale leaned over her desk. The office was dim except for the glow of her monitor. She'd been combing through digital archives for weeks, not by order, not by duty, but by obsession. It started as a rumor. Someone inside IT had mentioned that the department's servers had automatically synced data from officer-issued phones to an encrypted cloud backup, a detail no one bothered to check when Rountos' case was rushed through the courts. If the phone had been destroyed, but the data still existed online, it could change everything. Hale exhaled sharply. Let's see if ghosts leave fingerprints, she muttered, opening a hidden database the department had long forgotten. The digital resurrection. By late 2025, the public had mostly moved on. Rountos was a disgraced ex-cop living quietly, the victims' families still fighting civil suits, and the town's reputation still bleeding. But inside the department, a quiet war was brewing. Detective Hale found fragments, metadata trails, fragments of file names, timestamps from photosync logs. Some of them matched the dates students reported the images being shared. But one entry chilled her. Backup initiated, September 14, 2021, 11:38 p.m. That was the same night Rountos was questioned. The file path pointed not to his personal account, but to an off-site server belonging to the town of Brookfield IT division. It meant one thing: the evidence hadn't been destroyed. It had been hiding in plain sight. The secret order. Before Hale could escalate her discovery, she received an internal memo. It was brief, bureaucratic, and quietly explosive. Effective immediately, cease review of digital backup logs related to case #BPD 2021-078. Access restricted by judicial order. A judge had ordered a halt to the digital review, supposedly for privacy concerns. The same judge who'd presided over Rountos' sentencing months earlier. Hale stared at the memo, heart pounding. Delete it, the order had said. But she knew, they already had. Or so everyone thought. The irony was suffocating: the court was forbidding her from searching for evidence that had supposedly been destroyed, under an order to protect privacy that now threatened justice itself. Still, something about that timing didn't add up. Why issue an order now, after sentencing, if the case was closed? A judge under fire. Behind closed doors, reporters had begun whispering about the judge's connections to the Brookfield Police Union. Campaign contributions. Dinners. Photos at charity events. Nothing overtly illegal, but in the light of this new order, it all looked suspicious. When the Connecticut Post published a leak of Hale's memo, the story exploded. Judge ordered police to delete evidence, but they already did. The headline went viral. Citizens flooded town hall meetings demanding answers. The department stonewalled. The court remained silent. And Hale, suspended for unauthorized data access, found herself isolated. But she wasn't done. The breakthrough. Working from home, Hale reached out to an old contact, a cybersecurity consultant who once handled municipal backups. Together, they pieced together a map of the town's archived data structure. If the backup hadn't been manually purged, it might still exist in cold storage, locked but not gone. 2 sleepless nights later, they cracked an index. The file names were short, sterile, meaningless, strings of numbers. But embedded in the metadata was a single name, S. Rountos. She clicked one open. A series of low-resolution thumbnails flickered onto the screen. Faces blurred, time-stamped, GPS tagged inside Brookfield High. Not explicit photos, but the proof of existence. There it was, confirmation that the original images had synced to town servers before the phone's destruction. The crime wasn't just digital tampering, it was cover-up at a municipal level. If the backups were intentionally buried, someone higher up had known. The blowback. The revelation hit the news like a thunderclap. Local TV cut into broadcasts, reporters surrounded the courthouse. The district attorney reopened the case within days. When pressed, the court claimed the deletion order was a miscommunication. But internal emails leaked soon after showed otherwise. The judge had personally instructed IT staff to permanently delete any residual files, to protect the integrity of the court. That phrase, "protect the integrity," became a national joke and a local shame. The FBI stepped in, citing potential obstruction of justice. Hale's suspension was lifted, and she was reassigned to assist federal investigators. The town of Brookfield, now facing civil suits and criminal inquiries, was forced to admit that the deleted evidence had been mishandled, not once, but twice. Rountos cornered. When investigators finally confronted Rountos again, he didn't deny it. His lawyer tried to dismiss the new evidence as irrelevant metadata. But under pressure, Rountos cracked. He confessed that, days before smashing the phone, he had been warned, anonymously, that his device might be seized. The call had come from inside the department. That admission shifted the entire narrative. This wasn't a lone act of misconduct. It was systemic rot, the kind that festers under decades of loyalty and silence. The verdict that shook the town. In December 2025, a special grand jury indicted 2 senior officials for obstruction, one IT administrator and a judicial aide linked to the deletion order. The judge resigned quietly before impeachment proceedings began. Roundtoes, already on probation, was rearrested and pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice in exchange for a reduced sentence, 2 years in state prison. For the victims' families, it wasn't perfect justice. But it was something. Epilogue: The price of silence. When the final verdicts were read, the courtroom was packed again. Reporters scribbled notes, cameras hummed. Outside, the winter air bit cold and clean, the first breath of closure in 4 long years. Detective Hale stood on the courthouse steps, coat collar turned up, watching the crowd disperse. The truth had clawed its way back from digital oblivion, a ghost that refused to die. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Nice work. But you didn't find everything." She stared at the screen, uneasy. The message vanished before she could take a screenshot. In the reflection of her darkened phone screen, the courthouse loomed, solid, old, imperfect. Justice, she realized, is never truly deleted. Only delayed. And sometimes, what comes back from the cloud, changes everything. What if the very people sworn to uphold justice were the ones burying the truth? In Brookfield, Connecticut, a shocking order from a judge tried to erase a critical investigation, but the evidence had already survived. Secrets, corruption, and digital footprints collide in a story you won't believe. Detective Aaron Hale uncovered fragments of evidence thought destroyed. A disgraced officer, a silenced investigation, and a judicial order meant to protect privacy, yet it only raised more questions. When leaks hit the headlines, the town erupted, the department stonewalled, and Hale found herself suspended. But the truth doesn't stay buried. If you want to uncover the full story of corruption, cover-ups, and the fight for justice, hit like, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay on the edge of every shocking revelation. This is real crime, and it's happening right now.